thank you very much for choosing this venue to have your morning lunch. I got to meet Desiree through an associate, Renee Lighton. She might have been and attended some of your schools. She coached me. I got to meet her by chance. And when I say by chance, I met her at my son's primary school, which was Moulton Primary, and she was there just, I don't even know what you call it, orientation, I think. She was doing orientation with the grade 1 parents. And then I got to meet her. I remembered her because she threw Smarties out. That's the only way I remember. I don't remember a thing she said. So it was always one of my dreams and my visions to actually go back and speak to primarily the students. I didn't think I'd be speaking to the principals. But that's how life has availed itself. So thank you for the opportunity. I've got quite a fascinating story. And I'll start right at the very beginning, and I'll try and use my story and put it into the context of school, so that it helps you guys relate to it a little bit more. So one of the questions I always ask people, especially people that have really struggled in their lives, people that have really, been overwhelmed by circumstances. In grade 1 or grade 2, I don't know if it still happens in schools, but they asked me, what do you want to become? And I don't know if that question is still asked to kids today, but I remember that. I remember it. It was in my schooling from, I don't know why it's engraved in my memory. But I wanted to be a doctor. Okay, life didn't play out like that though. So my life has been filled with lots of amazing moments, but it's also been filled with lots of really deep valleys. So I'm a high school dropout. So I never finished school. I don't recommend that anybody takes that path because it's a lot harder to make a success of any venture that you set out on without the proper education. So I'm all for education. But a lot of things happened in my life. I think one of the most traumatic moments in my life was when I lost my mom when I was 12 years old. And I lost her to cancer, and it was, I said to somebody the other day, the first time I started making raw juice, which is what you have in front of you today, which is like primarily carrot and ginger and apple, was because my mom needed some form of sustenance to actually help her, with the chemotherapies. And as a child of 12 years old, I never understood much of it. One day when I walked into the room, my mom was just laying on the bed crying. I didn't even know why she was crying. And I assumed that was the day she came back and she got the news. But ultimately, my older sisters, were the ones who ran the household when my dad was out. This obviously didn't bode very well for my schooling, because I started to hang out with the wrong crowds. I've started to find things cooler to do, than schoolwork. And that became, that started as a weekend thing, and then it turned into a weekly thing, and eventually it got to the point where I was forging signatures. I'm sure that you still deal with students that forge signatures for doctors' letters and stuff, but this is an old practice, and I'm sure it's been perfected already since I started, since we were doing it. But like my dad had the policy that if you weren't at school, you were either working or you were not living under that roof. So I had to find a place to stay, and I think I was at the age of 16. And I would kind of do whatever it took to just get by. I mean, all of this is intertwined with a life of drinking and drugging. Just to put this into context, and that became progressively worse as the years went by. Today I'm very proud of myself, I'm very proud of my achievements, I'm a recovering drug addict. My idea around this talk today was more to have a conversation with you guys around issues that are challenging for you as principals in your schools. And when I look at schools as just another business. So I either look at a school that's well run, a business that's well run, or I look at a school that's poorly run. I mean, if you guys as principals, who are your clients?
Teachers, learners, parents.
Learners, yeah, absolutely. Parents, yes. So in that context, if I'd like to take my business is now 15 years old, so that's the business that you're sitting in. This just started with an idea. Okay, nobody gave me money for it. It started with a little idea, and the idea drove a purpose, and that purpose was to solve the problem. Who are the suppliers of the schools? Educators departments, government departments.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk open and frankly, guys. This isn't,
The service providers as well. I mean, the ones that provide your copy paper from your intern. I mean, they all filtering in
Absolutely,
into the school system, and they're not standing alone in any case.
Yeah. So there's a greater community in terms of the service providers that's actually involved in the success of the school. I tend to, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I tend to get the feeling that there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in terms of like how decision making takes place. And as no, you don't. No, you just. I imagine schools with the greenest grass. I really do. I imagine schools with the greatest sports fields. Because if I think when I was growing up, that was the most fun thing about being in school. It also became a very social thing on the weekends when there were sports games being played, that the whole family came together. And I heard a few teachers saying, "Sheesh, you know what, the parents don't understand. The parents are not involved." Are we as leaders giving opportunity for the parents to be involved? Are we thinking about it differently? Or are we calling them into the principal's office? Because I used to hate that.
If someone asks you, do you think you run a successful business, what would you say and why would you say that? Because I think my opinion of a successful school is probably different than someone else's opinion. But does good matric results make my school a successful school versus do you make lots of money and therefore you got a successful business? So maybe, I don't know if I explained that well enough.
I don't think, success needs to be defined by the individual. I just finished reading a book by Viktor Frankl called The Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if anybody's heard about that book, but in that book, he defines the meaning of life to be whatever your purpose is at that moment in your life. And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with it. It's the same as how we define success. You'll have those markers that you want in your school. You'll have the things that you see, like, listen, it's not all about results, because I didn't even pass matric, so I'm an example of school not working for me. Well, maybe not for the next guy. My next guy might have got a matric, went to university and created a very successful business. I have friends like that have gone through the really, really good universities and been a great success. I think that it's more about impact for me. It's that how do you impact your environment? How do you genuinely change things? Because if there's no change, you're not going to be remembered for anything.
But the question is, at some point in your life, there needed to be a point, where you decided that, look, I'm going to go in a different direction towards restoring my path. Do you remember that? Was it an epiphany moment, or how do you remember that moment?
I think the thing that really shifted for me was that I saw something more important than me, if that makes any sense to you. And that came with like really reaching a moment where I was an absent father. I was really not around the house. I was like, I kind of played a very similar role to what my dad was playing. That's all I knew. It was like, make sure the money's there, the rent gets paid, blah, blah, blah. And even that was like touch and go, you know what I mean? But there was that point, where I was confronted by my wife, and my wife said, like, you're losing us. That's all she said. You're losing us, because I'd had a bender the night before. I ended up that morning coming into the house, and she was standing there with my baby son. He was like, I think he was about 8 or 9 months old, and that was that moment. That was that moment that like really shifted things for me. Because suddenly I saw that I would lose something more than me. So yeah, it's everybody needs to find that we can't deprive ourselves from that journey. As much as it might seem like to most people when they hear about stories like that, they're like, oh shit, I don't want to talk about it. But things like addiction, abuse, just bullying. These are rife in society. They're rife in society because I think that there's been a shift away from humility, or just a shift away from believing that there's something bigger than us. I'm that naughty boy that you're dealing with every day, and you don't know where I'm going to end up. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Because I'm frustrating to you. right? I'm not ticking all the boxes for you. I'm not fitting into the box that you want me to fit in. So I'm that kid. But we have a duty, you have a duty to have that conversation, because somebody had the conversation with me. Somebody said to me, so far and no further. And that's a good conversation to have with anyone. I can tell you now, irrespective of how you feel about whether you're going to hurt the person's feelings, you're going to do more harm by not having the conversation.
I have two comments. What lessons are you going to be teaching your children? And the other is, I have a moral dilemma in that you're a bad boy who's made good. I would prefer that we caution children about getting to bad boy stage. Your comment on that?
I'm a bit of a softie when it comes to raising my kids, and I think I overcompensate. But lessons that I leave my wife's quite stern on the other hand, so we balance one another out. But all I want for my boys, and this is what I encourage in when I'm raising them, is that they search out their own truth. They find what is meaningful to them. All I can do as a parent is to support that. Good manners, absolutely. Being honest, absolutely. Being willing, absolutely. And being open-minded. Let's just say you have an assembly, maybe to encourage more people to come in that have either recovered from some of these bad behaviors and come and talk to people and say, like, listen, I did this, man. I've been part of this, and this is where that has led as a result of it. And that's all you can do, actually, I think. You can only, when that person's ready, that person will, so it's a hard one. It's hard. Thank you. It was a good question.
Actually, I have a question, but I'd like to try and respond as well. Isn't that where our challenge lies? In that we don't want the bad boys, but they're not going anywhere. So I think there's a need for a different approach. And as principals, I think many times we are stuck in our schema, our mental models. And so I think there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen at the school level, principal level, teacher level, to actually embrace the reality that we face. And so currently, if I look at the way the education system is, and that's why I appreciate your talk, it's just alluding us to, and you mentioned this, we really need to get to understand our client. And what we, as teachers, as principals, we're not doing enough. And the bad boy will not go away. He's not going anywhere. Maybe you also said at the beginning, being disengaged in the classroom. Not your curiosity being tapped into, your creativity. And that's a challenge as we face. And so I don't know if that sort of helps, but that's the reality. The bad boy, the bad girl is not going to go away. I think we need to challenge our own mental models.
The bad boy, bad girl, it's not going to go anywhere, as we heard. But I also find out that in that naughty boy, does he want to be a naughty boy? I find with investing from my busy time, just that moment with him, and then relate and come down on his level. And then find out that there's not even some things at school related that blows off steam at school, actually coming from backtrack. They can't look at each other without swearing, yet their lives went on. So in a real life case, I called the mom and dad in and I said, look, there's no way where you're going to get together again. But for this boy, you keep on, if you come and fetch the child for weekends, you're constantly in each other's hair about P's and Q's and all of that, because that's what the child is telling me about. And other things too. And they were took aback to notice that the child seen all of these things, and he's only 10, will be 11 years old. And at the end I said to them, look, you can't change the past, what happened, it happened. But did one of you thought of saying sorry to him? It's a simple thing. You don't need to go in detail. And I had to equip them, I had to educate them how to talk to each other about it. and to him coming on his level, because he's in a child world. He don't understand adult stuff. But at the end of the day, after a long session in the office, I said to them, look, I'm going to let him come in and just follow my lead. And when he came in, I just said, Mom, you will tell Dad everything that happened at home because you just gave your phone number to me. And Dad, you will ask Mom, how was so-and-so's day today? And they just followed and they just said yes. And as they were saying that, that child's world light up, you know. And I just said, and Dad, you will be in every academic awards because it's a brilliant child. And you will be at every soccer match and so on and so on. And at the end, that child he was looking at the two of them, grabbing the two of them, and it was a wow moment. Because at the moment, it was torn apart. I love Mom 110%, I love Dad 110%. But the two of them got their own families and they don't see eye to eye. I didn't had another incident with that learner. So investing time into our learners, I know time is precious, but that is just somebody to hear and to believe in them and come down on their level and understand.